Waiters, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? I saw a couple have a full-blown argument in the middle of the restaurant. The woman stood up, took her ring off, threw it at him, and walked out. The man continued his meal, had dessert, and then paid the bill, left a pretty big tip for the inconvenience, and left. I've done this once. We were having a drink, and I don't even remember what I said. My boyfriend got really pissed and just walked away. Not a big, loud argument, but there was a bit of cutting remarks. After he left, I slowly finished my drink and left 15 minutes after him. I didn't want people to figure out that he left me there like an idiot, so I just tried to act normal. Plus, there wasn't a single chance that I was going to run after him. You waited? Username does not check out. I was once having dinner with my then-girlfriend. She was in the middle of a scholarship application process, and mid-dinner she received a phone call. She had a hand in some papers before an office closed that day. She apologized and ran to her house to get the papers. I stayed, finished my dinner, and asked for takeaway for her. When the waitress brought me the bill, she gave a piece of cake, saying her manager was sorry for me. I took the cake home and shared it with my girlfriend. 2 failed marriage proposals on the same Valentine's Day. The first one simply said, "No, I can't do this," and walked out. The second one stared like a deer frozen in the headlights for an excruciating 30 seconds before muttering, "Let's talk about this later." They stayed for the rest of their 6-course V-Day special dinner, eating and making painful small talk. I always wonder about couples like this. How could the guy be so off the mark as to not know if his GF will say yes? Do they not communicate? Is she pretending to like him more than she does? These are questions I need answers to. Hey man, don't judge. Lots of people make mistakes on first dates. Poor impulse control and not thinking through all the possible outcomes. I know pop culture views it as romantic, but I kind of think proposing in a public place is sort of a dick move to begin with. You're basically forcing the person you're proposing to look like a jerk in front of strangers if she or he says no. If you aren't 100% certain the person will say yes, then your relationship is nowhere near a point where getting engaged is an option. I am a bartender, but happen to be the one on the date for this particular disaster. So anyone in the service industry knows. You generally just do not make plans on certain holidays because you'll have to work no matter what. I had not had a date on Valentine's in probably 7 years. So when my boss gave me the day off, I was surprised and posted something dumb on Insta about it. I got a DM from a girl I knew, but not very well, asking me out for Valentine's, and she was way cute, so I figured why the fuck not. Things went so wrong, so quickly. We get to the restaurant, grab a drink in the bar while we wait on our table. Took a shot to get the social lubricant flowing since we don't really know each other very well. I pay our bar tab, and we move to the table. To set the scene a bit, this place is a really nice steakhouse, and they have these dark red, diamond pattern booths that are fluffy with buttons at each point of the pattern. Hard to explain, but it looks something like this. The moment we sit down, my date lets out a blood-curdling scream like she had just been stabbed. She grabs her arm, and her hand comes away covered in blood. And she looks so confused, and I have no idea what the fuck just happened. I look around thinking someone just stabbed her, but everyone around us is seated just staring over at us. I move over to her side of the booth and grab the napkins off the table to find where she is cut. The entire back of her upper arm is sliced from elbow to shoulder. One of the buttons had broken off of the wall, and the snapped metal fastener was exposed, so when she sat down, her arm ran all the way down along it. She is panicking. I'm trying to stop the bleeding, while the people around us figure out what is going on and call 911 for us. The manager comes over and is immediately a defensive asshole until he sees that it was his booth that did the damage. The paramedics show up, I get the owner's info from the manager, and we spend the night in the ER where she needed something like 80 stitches. We both are exhausted at this point, when a guy walks in with flowers, champagne, and a bag of takeout food from the restaurant we had left. It was the owner of the restaurant coming to make sure we could have the Valentine's meal we had missed out on. Sure, it was probably because he was afraid to get sued, but it was still really welcomed after how shitty the night had become. So quickly. She and I ended up dating for almost 3 years and became good friends with the owner. Such good friends, she ended up banging him, and that was the last I heard from either of them. Woo, Valentine's. I have stuck to working those nights ever since. The end. Edit. I would like to sincerely thank the people going through my comment history and messaging me things like, maybe if you didn't play so many video games like a man-child, then you wouldn't get cucked. You guys are making my fucking night, and it is hilarious. How dare people enjoy things? Also, thanks you /PMJM for throwing the chair pick on Imager since we killed the site. Not really a disaster, but this guy came in and said he was waiting for his date. He stayed for 5 hours waiting, and she never showed. He eventually ordered four for himself and asked that I remove the other glass of water from the table. He said it was their first date. Damn, why would you wait for 5 hours? I'm out of there after 30 minutes. Not a total disaster, but still not good. Had a table of 2 people, probably in their mid-40s last year. Took 45 minutes for this couple to get their entrees due to our kitchen being way too slammed. When they were dropped at the table, they immediately asked for to-go boxes because they told their babysitter they'd be home by a certain time. I overheard the wife say, "Well, I guess this is why we don't celebrate Valentine's Day." The worst part was that they weren't angry, just very sad. My personal feelings about dining out on Valentine's Day aside, I felt so horrible that this couple clearly had put in an effort to have a nice night with each other only to have it go that way. We comped their meals, by the way. Edit to clear up some timing issues. I should have added more context to this the first time, but wanted to keep it simple. They made a reservation, but unfortunately got seated about 10 minutes late. They ordered a round of drinks while looking over the menu, then a salad course, and then entrees. So at the point their entrees arrived, they had already been in the restaurant for close to an hour and a half. As a mom of 3 who rarely gets to go on dates with my husband, this just made me so very sad. I feel their disappointment in my soul. Nice that at least they got their meal comped. Kudos to you and your manager. That said, I bet they planned for a while to get the time and probably haven't had a date in a while. I was working as a waitress in a sushi restaurant, and Valentine's Day was an all-hands-on-deck shift. This guy I had just started seeing wanted to go out, but I told him that working in food service, you never get Valentine's Day off, and we just have to celebrate the day after or the weekend after. Nope. He got so upset that he went and asked a different girl out. Came to the restaurant I worked at on V-Day and sat in my section. He then proceeded to spend the entire evening making a fool out of himself and making his date uncomfortable as he tried to make me jealous. Needless to say, we didn't go out again. Ever. If he had surprised you at work and brought a couple friends that didn't have dates for dinner so that he could still see you on Valentine's Day, he'd have earned 1,000,000 points. But no, not only did he get mad over something stupid, he blew it with 2 women at once. Honestly, I am kind of fucking impressed. That's obviously insane level of confidence. Edit. Gotta love being exhausted and thinking you typed out words that were in your head. Totally. When I first saw him getting seated by the hostess, I thought he was coming to surprise me, and I thought it was so sweet. Then the awful reality slowly dawned on me. My co-workers were just as livid once they realized what was going on. Saw a couple have a full-on argument at a restaurant. I wasn't their server, but the table was directly in the center of the restaurant, and they were certainly loud enough for everyone to hear. My manager kindly asked them to leave, and the guy's response was to yell, "I've been wanting to do that shit for 2 years now," and stormed out. It was like a movie. I was bartending in an Italian restaurant. Not a fancy one, but still, and it's pretty much full of Valentine's dates. A guy walks in and sits at the bar by himself, looking pretty down. He asked for a whiskey, so I poured it, told him it was on the house because he looked like he needed it. He proceeds to tell me his story. He had come to the city to surprise his girlfriend for Valentine's, about a 5-hour bus trip between cities, and he sure surprised her. She was in her dorm room, fucking one of his friends from high school. He didn't know what to do, so he just walked into the first place that sold alcohol. I spilled as much whiskey as he wanted and watched the Raptors with him. Never saw him again. It's cliche, but it happened. Edit. Watch the Raptors isn't a euphemism. We watched the basketball game. I know we have the benefit of hindsight, but I can't help feeling like it's a terrible idea to have a fair on Valentine's Day in a place where your so could conceivably find you, even if they live 5 hours away. Edit. Yes, cheating is bad. I just get amused by how cheaters choose to navigate their already risky situation. Go big or go home, I guess. Don't cheat, folks. To be fair, she lived on campus, so probably first year. Teenagers aren't the best at foresight and subtlety in my experience. Still a pretty terrible idea though. Back when I served food at one of those super touristy seafood restaurants. I worked a Valentine's Day double shift. For lunch, this younger couple came in celebrating their 1-year anniversary. I offer my congratulations and proceed to do my usual spiel before taking orders. The girl is looking more and more dismayed the longer I talk. Finally, I get to the end and ask if there are any allergies. She looks directly at her boyfriend and states, "Yes, I'm allergic to fish and shellfish." Then looks over at me very sad. I made sure every aspect of her meal was fine for her. But it was that look of we've been dating a year and he still takes me to a restaurant that could kill me that really did it for me. That reminds me when my parents got me a huge strawberry-filled cake with strawberries on it for my 25th birthday. I'm deathly allergic to strawberries. So, did they have a life insurance policy on you or something? 25 is the last year a lot of insurance plans cover your kids. I'm sure that's just a coincidence, though. Happened to my poor coworker. A guy and his date came in for Valentine's Day. They had a great time, ate a lot of food, drank a lot of wine, and got along really well with my coworker who was their server. About 2 months later, they come back in and request my coworker again, who happily says yes to serving them. He goes up and greets them. The guy introduces his wife to him, and my coworker mentions something about how much he enjoyed serving them on Valentine's Day. They go quiet. Wife gets up and leaves. Guy just lowers his head. Turns out he had brought his mistress in on Valentine's Day, but my coworker didn't realize he was with a different woman this time around, so didn't think anything of it. We never saw the guy again. Guy was a POS for cheating, obviously, but also what an idiot to request the server he had while with the other woman. Why did the husband request the same waiter? That's just stupid on his part. Busboy on Las Vegas Strip, an attempted proposal. Dude tries to set up sign with GF's friends for her to show up and see the ring near a fountain. Duck stole the ring. They found it 2 hours later as he dropped in the fountain. She still said yes. Free drinks were given. Was a server at a popular seafood chain that isn't very fancy, but when you live in a town like the one I worked in, that sort of place is the nicest place to go for Valentine's Day. Well, the night was incredibly busy when a couple came in. They were upset after waiting 45 minutes for a table, and they were complaining quite a lot. The woman was decked out in a super nice dress and faux fur coat that was actually very realistic. Well, she was sat and served her frozen drink. She goes to lift the glass to her mouth, and inexplicably, the bottom of the cup simply breaks and the drink is spilled all over her dress and nice coat. Was unfortunate. Edit, to everyone asking about the restaurant. Yes, it's the place y'all think it is. Red Lobster is a wild place. The way you describe that ending sounds like how Harry Potter would describe his magicking away the glass and trapping Dudley in the S&A. Co-exhibit. Younger couple came in for what I can only assume was a first date. Ordered a pizza, but never ate. Caught up in conversation, I guess. Guy must have been feeling confident BC about 2 hours, and he gets up, goes to the bathroom, and then decides to sit next to her in the booth rather than across from her where he was before. I swear to you, she then got up and used the restroom about 10 minutes later, and when she came back, decided it would best if they didn't sit next to each other and sat in his original place. Please refrain from doing this. Edit. Feels like I've answered 1,000 times, so here. No, there's in my eyes. Nothing wrong with sitting next to your date rather than across. I realize that as long as you're comfortable with it, you can do whatever. Who cares what people think? The awkward part is that he moved next to her, and she decided to move to the different side in response. Long story short, please don't make me watch an unnecessary awkward situation. You can always, maybe, ask if it's cool if you move next to them before you do it. I worked at Pizza Hut, and the guy asked if I could bake a ring in the pizza. I politely declined. Their waitress did, however, put their ring on the pizza before bringing it to the table. The girl saw the ring, got mad, yelled at him for proposing at a Pizza Hut, and walked out. He asked for a box, took the pizza, and went after her. Edits. The store I worked at was the old buffet-style store converted into a sports bar. So did serve beer and wine, which none of the other Pizza Huts near my location did. So I guess a little bit fancier than a normal Pizza Hut, but still a Pizza Hut. And I would never have thought a story about a failed proposal in a Pizza Hut would be my top comment. A girl that I worked with went to lunch on Valentine's Day at an expensive restaurant her boyfriend had gotten a reservation for. She got dressed up nice, was going on about how sure she was that he was going to propose. He broke up with her. Did she then fall into a deep depression, decide to change her whole academic career, and go to Harvard Law School? Edit. I have received awards for refereeing a movie. Thanks. I have also seen Legally Blonde. But no, she just sobbed at her desk for the rest of the day, got super religious, and met her future husband at church, then quit her job soon after they were engaged. I was friends with her on Facebook, but she doesn't post much anymore. I was a waitress many moons ago, and two couples spring to mind. The first were an older couple who were dressed nicely. They were polite and cordial to me, but not overly enthusiastic or friendly. They were at the table for a little over an hour and a half, and we didn't see them say one word to each other during that time. Every time I went over to their table, the atmosphere felt like I'd walked straight into an argument, but they weren't speaking or looking at each other or anything. It very quickly became awkward as fuck. The second couple was meant to be having a proposal dinner. The guy had rung to book a table and had let us know he was going to propose during dessert. He'd given the ring to kitchen staff so we could bring it out with a cake, and he got some balloons and streamers too. Anyway, he walks in a couple of steps behind his partner. Everyone has big grins for them both, but he grits his teeth and shakes his head, surreptitiously dragging his finger across his throat pantomime style. Great. Oh, and lucky me, they're seated in my section. It's obvious she was bloody furious with him about something. She spends the first half of the meal seething quietly, and the second having a constant pop at him. While she was in the loo, the manager made me double check he didn't want us to bring the ring out or anything. Fuck no, was his response. I felt really bad for him. She really was mean? Oh man, I'm just imagining if some wires had gotten crossed and they'd brought the ring out anyway. How awkward would that be? Or the guy changes the plan, they bring out the ring, say, here's what you're never getting, and then hand it to him. He pockets it, pays the check, and leaves. Not my table, but back in my Olive Garden days. We had a man who looked to be in his mid-20s tap his empty wine glass with a fork to call for attention of the surrounding strangers, then get down on one knee with silver band in hand, and ask his girlfriend/date to accept this promise ring. She looked horrified start to finish. But I'll find out Friday cause I work a fucking double, and it's Applebee's. Update. Sorry, Reddit. I've been working a shit ton and haven't had a minute to update you guys. So basically, Valentine's Day at Applebee's wasn't much different than any other Friday night working there. But I will say, a lot of people were stingy as fuck with their tips. And I mean a lot of people. Also, there was a couple who dined and dashed, and there was a dude who got stood up. Other than that, it was about as trashy as normal. Happy belated Valentine's Day, everybody. Back to work I go. A guy proposed to his girlfriend, and she said no. The guy threw his arms up and ran out of the building. Later, while waiting for someone to pick her up, she told us it was completely out of the blue, because they'd only been dating for a few months. Another V-Day. A guy raised a huge fuss over the fact that we wouldn't serve liquor to his underage girlfriend. I'm certain you mean he threw up his hands momentarily in exasperation. But I can't help picturing him running out of the restaurant arms, straight up Kermit the Frog style. I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro. My second Valentine's there was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant, including the bar and patio from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was canceled or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude, however, kept pushing and pushing, asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he is seated, constantly saying how he is a regular customer and how his date is going to be there at 7. He got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available and all the customers before him were seated, he would get a table, but because the amount of reservations, we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50, the guy loses it. Fast walks up to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book, and practically runs out the front door. Now everything is going to complete shit because the only copy of the reservation for the night that is barely half over is gone. Two of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try and get the book back, but by the time they got out, he had already left the parking lot. Even better is 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant, and the dude shows back up, saying he has a reservation for two. 3 of the 5 of the owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window, saying, "Do not serve this man. TLDR salty dude without reservation steals reservation book," and then tries to come back later at it. If anyone wants to use this for a sitcom, feel free. Just let me reprise my role as the waiter, and we can call it even. All I can picture is this dude thinking that he can get his way by essentially reenacting the restaurant version of that joke/urban legend with the university student who finishes his exam late. And when the proctor won't accept it, the student asks, "Do you know who I am?" Then, when told no, he grabs the stack of exam booklets and flings them into the air and runs out. Not a waiter, but I was a pastry chef at this big resort in Cape Cod. We got a special order from this guy who was coming in for his anniversary, Valentine's Day. He wanted his dessert to have, "Will you marry me?" written on it, so he could pop the question when it came out. He called ahead to the front and back kitchen. Even came in himself that morning to make sure it was good to go. The whole crew was behind him. We had cooks all night coming in to ask if it had happened yet. I wrote the inscription on the plate and dressed it to the nines with gold leaf and expensive chocolate. I'm taking a picture of the plate just before it's set to go out and notice our head waiter come in with a weird look on his face. He says plainly, they don't need it. She broke up with him before the entrees hit the table. A couple sitting at the bar were enjoying their night out. The man got up from his bar stool and left for the bathroom. As his girlfriend was alone and absolutely wasted at the bar, a random woman approached and revealed that she recently matched with the woman's boyfriend on Tinder and had hooked up a week earlier. The drunk girlfriend refused to believe this story, so the woman showed her his Tinder profile and their conversation. The boyfriend returned to a drunk, sobbing, and screaming girlfriend. I felt like I was watching a reality TV show. It was incredible. The poor girl was basically carried out of the bar by her boyfriend of 3 years, whom she just discovered has been cheating on her for who knows how long. It was the most dramatic moment I have ever experienced, and it was absolutely none of my business. Edit. I was a barback at the time, and this couple sat directly in front of the place I spend most of my time, the glass washing station. Edit 2. For those wondering how the woman knew the couple was in a long-term relationship, I really don't know. My guess is she figured it out the same way I did, based on listening, body language, and the fact that this woman was overly touchy and liberal with cheek kisses and such. It was fairly obvious. Regardless, she approached out of concern and curiosity, and she succeeded in outing the guy, which resulted in a very upsetting scene. I was working for a higher-end chain steakhouse in the northwest corner of Greater Los Angeles, in the Valley. Valentine's is obviously one of the top 5 busiest days of the year for us. We did about 500 covers between 5 and 10 p.m. It's also a restaurant with a very open concept floor plan. Booths along the 4 walls of the restaurant, and an array of tables in the middle with no partitions or anything between them. A younger couple, maybe mid-20s, dressed to the nines, came in shortly after we opened and were seated in a table basically in the dead center of the dining room. They were very friendly and pleasant, and I could tell that for them. Dining at our restaurant was a really special treat, so I did everything in my power to make it special for them. When they're done, probably around 7, I brought their check, which was around $300. When I came back to pick it up, the guy had a super embarrassed look on his face, and he said he thinks he left his wallet in the car, and the woman, who is embarrassed for him, doesn't have anything with her because her dress had no pockets and she didn't bring a purse. So he goes out and 5 minutes later comes back and looking pale as a ghost. He has left his wallet at home and asks if he can call back later with payment info. My GM won't let this fly because there's no collateral of any sort he can leave. So the guy has to drive home to Burbank to get his wallet while the woman waits, with her hair done and her red lipstick and her pretty dress in the middle of the dining room on Valentine's Day. Now, on the best day with no traffic never happens. It's at least 40 minutes each way from our restaurant to Burbank. She was there for almost 2 hours waiting for this guy. We were all so embarrassed for her that the staff kept discreetly slipping her drinks and little amused boosh bites from the kitchen. It was one of the most awkward things I've ever seen in a restaurant. When he finally got back, he was super apologetic to us and to her. He paid the check and tipped like 30% and then left. It was pretty obvious it was an honest mistake, but I still think about that couple from time to time and wonder how things worked out for them. Posting this from my phone, so apologies for any typos or formatting problems. That's why you always do the triple pocket tap. That's why you play your pockets like fucking bongos. Old man proposed to old woman. He tried to get off the chair to kneel, tripped and fell, and I assume broke something since he couldn't get back up, and we had to call an ambulance. My manager had to drive her teeth to the hospital separately because she had taken them out to eat her soup, Lord knows why, and left them on the table in the confusion. Edited to add. I don't know if she said yes. My manager didn't get to see them at the hospital, only pass on her teeth to the nurse. Thank you kindly for the gold and silver, though. Laughed so hard that my husband woke up and thought I was sobbing. Tried to stifle since he was sleeping. He reached over to console me. I imagined the teeth in the passenger seat, strapped onto the seatbelt, just sitting there and chilling, smiling and wanting to chat. In college, I waited tables, and Valentine's Day was always a good one in terms of tips. I once saw a couple come in to eat. Halfway through the dinner, the man's wife shows up to surprise the couple. The wife took the wine bottle and poured the remnants on the husband's head, took off her ring, and told the girlfriend she could have him. He tipped me a $100. You gotta think that your wife might think something is up when you're busy on Valentine's Day. I worked at a sports bar. Every couple there on Valentine's Day was a divorce waiting to happen. Nothing says romance like being around a bunch of loud bros in jerseys eating wings and burgers. I had a girlfriend once that was huge on sports. The atmosphere, the shouting, it all made her face just light up in a way I can't even describe. We did that once, and it was one of the best dates I've ever been on. A guy did a backflip and asked a girl to be his Valentine. She declined. I walked up to him and asked if he was fine. He said it took him a week to perfect. I feel for this guy, man. Hope he found someone. Depends on who you ask as to whether or not this is a disaster. Place I worked at in college was a pretty nice establishment and a romantic destination because our view overlooked the entire city. It was also located at the top of a 5-star hotel that had several projectors cycling through what was going on around the hotel and the lobby. There was no footage from the gym or pool, so it was relatively tame and never a privacy issue. Best you'd ever get were people eating, walking around the lobby, or drinking at the bar. Anyway, guy walks in with his wife and asks to be seated in a secluded area. Well, you can imagine, since it's busy in Valentine's Day, we didn't have those. So he basically waited an extra hour to make sure he was seated in the back corner. It's my section. I take their drink order and take care of them, though the husband was gone when I returned, and I didn't see him go to the bathroom. Thinking nothing of it, I go to the bar to get the drink and see all of my coworkers huddled around the monitor above the bar along with everyone else in there. Sure enough, I found the husband as he was underneath the table going down on his wife. Only problem was the camera above their table had a clear view because it was situated in the corner. So now the entire hotel lobby can see as it cycles between us and the bar laughing, people checking in, and our romantic couple dining on each other. More and more people start to notice, and the bar fills up. This includes back-of-the-house staff like dishwashers and the line cooks. Eventually, it also brings out my manager, who runs over to their table, tells them what happened, and they both run out mortified. But before they do, the husband tries to stand up too quickly and flips the table, ruining all the plates while also exposing that his fly was down and his dick is out. He's yelling at my manager, the hotel manager, who came up when he saw it in the lobby, and security unzipped as he's escorted out. So yes, disaster for them, but man, they made a lot of people laugh that night. But why go to a restaurant to eat something you could get at home? Yeah, I was the disaster. I was a new server, and horrible. I dumped an entire tray on the floor. My bad. Edit. I'm loving all the servers sharing their stories. For everyone still in the business, may the odds be ever in your favor for Valentine's Day. May your customers tip well and not be assholes. As a newish waitress, I was helping work a birthday party. Turned out it was for an acquaintance of mine and knew them fairly well. It was time to bring out their ice cream cake, and as I was bringing it out on a tray one-handed, I suddenly tripped and the cake was sliding forward. Apparently my body was already prepared to save this cake from imminent destruction, and my free hand caught the cake by the top. So it was sandwiched between my hands. I was absolutely mortified and nearly in tears. The party told me it was okay. The cake was saved and they just cut the top off. But this event still causes me to lay awake at night. Hope this made you laugh, because I haven't told a soul about this haha edit. First, thank you to everyone for the rewards. Came back to my phone and was overwhelmed. Second, to everyone commenting how you've done something similar, thank you for sharing your great stories. I am crying laughing at them. And third, because I forgot to clarify, this happened over 10 years ago. Yes, it haunts me till this day, and I believe it will forever. 16 years in hospitality gives you some good stories. The most awkward. My first job as a waitress, a guy wanted to propose to his girlfriend. He came in 2 months before to book and had everything figured out. He planned to pop the question during dessert. We had champagne, balloons, and sparklers prepped for the big moment. The time comes. He drops to one knee, gives a speech about his love for her. He asks. She says no, puts the ring in her bag, finishes her dessert, and leaves. Quite possibly the most awkward thing I've had to witness, alongside around 200 other people. The manager gave him everything for free. He felt that bad for him. The most fucked up. I was working as a duty manager, and one of the tills kept dropping off the network. As I was trying to fix it, I could clearly hear the conversation at the table by the waiter's station. It started out sweet enough with her excitedly telling him she was pregnant. He went quiet and didn't say anything for a bit, and then asked her what the plan was. She said she was keeping the baby. He said he didn't want kids and had told her this. She got upset and said she thought he'd be happy and change his mind when he found out. By this point, I fixed the till, but am unable to step away from his car crash. Turns out she stopped taking the pill without telling him, thinking she could turn him around. He said he knew she could be a little nuts sometimes, but this was next level. He told her it was over and she could send someone to collect her things, as he wanted nothing more to do with her. He called me over to pay the bill and just left. The guy never even shouted. He just calmly went fuck this and noped out of there. I couldn't even look her in the eye. Just left her to leave in her own time. The funniest. Managing hotel room service where there was a Valentine's package that included getting each course of the special menu delivered to your room. More than a few couples thought it was a good idea to call for the next course and then start having sex. Having to help with deliveries as reception fucked up the bookings. I had the privilege of people answering the door naked, seeing sex toys strewn around, and one where the other members of the threesome were carrying on in the background. After complaints of similar instances from my team, I had to take action. I ended up having to call the offending guests and tell them if they could not respect my team by answering the legals in at least a closed dressing gown, they could come down and collect the rest of tea. The guy admitted that they were trying to recreate a bukkake-type scene in the shower, using conditioner as the cum. He slipped in the conditioner and fell on her. Fucking don't get how people still think trapping someone with a baby is a good idea. Some people are perfectly happy without kids. Like WTF edit. While this comment blew up, I didn't mean it as an attack on women in either. I just meant as woman, I could never see the benefit of this. You are tricking your partner and breaking their trust. All in all, a bad idea. Had a man and woman sharing dessert, and the man playfully put a bit of the ice cream on her nose. She then did the same, and he did it back once more, but with a different flavor of ice cream. She then flipped out at him because, you know I like chocolate the most, why would you waste it, you idiot? In the end, she stormed out, caused the man couldn't comprehend how much she was blowing up the situation. TLDR, man put ice cream on woman's nose, she is fine with it the first time. The second time, she rages and leaves. Nothing too scandalous, but I'd say happy Valentine's Day pretty much to any couple that sat at my tables. Occasionally, one of them would say something like, we're not dating. Some of the times, the other person would give a look that pretty much confirmed that they both had very different interpretations of what was going on. There's an episode of 30 Rock where they mention that going to IKEA is a big stress test in relationships. That has nothing on going to a restaurant on the busiest days of the year. particularly Mother's Day and Valentine's, especially when it's on a weekend. I'd say 99% of the disasters I've seen have just been normal run-of-the-mill issues where couples realize they have different levels of patience. And one person undoubtedly gets aggravated with the packed restaurant, and their time is ruined.